Chapter 4. Aldo Breath. The first time I saw Kiana, I knew she was going to be a pain in my neck. It was the first day of school, the marshmallow roast, and she was the new girl, so I was nice. I took a pencil, speared a marshmallow, and made room for her around the fire. Talk about rude. She refused to take it because it was unsanitary. That's the last time I tried to be a gentleman. You know those bossy types you think they know everything? That's Kiana. One time I'm in the cafeteria when she comes up to me and tells me to stop kicking the candy machine. If I'm kicking the candy machine, I'm doing it for a very good reason. Who put her in charge of the world? She grabs my arm and hauls me away from the machine. What's wrong? I want a Zagnut, I tell her in fury. It gave me a Mounds. So? Man, she really isn't from around here. At Greenwich Middle School, everyone knows two things about me. When I want something, nothing stands in my way. 2, I don't like coconut. I look around. There's dead silence in the cafeteria, but no one's eyes are on me. They know better than to get between me and the Zagnut bar. All except for Kiana. Maybe all Californians are like that. They can't mind their own business. She asked, and if you keep on kicking it, will the Zagnut come out? Maybe, I say stubbornly. She shrugs. Then go ahead. But here's the thing. I don't want to kick it anymore. She's ruined it for me. The worst part is she's in SCS 8, so I can never get away from her. We spend the whole day in room 117 except for lunch in the cafeteria and phys ed, which is in the gym with a couple of other classes. The only sure place to avoid her is the boys' room. She hasn't followed me in there yet. Well, so far. Our teacher, Mr. Kermit, is probably in his 50s, but he looks like 900. Actually, he looks like he's already dead, hunched over his desk, his eyes half closed. He never moves a muscle. It's hard to tell if he's even breathing. I'm amazed he isn't swinging from the light fixture for all the coffee the guy drinks. Mostly, he's working on a real complicated crossword puzzle. He hates my guts, at least I think he does. All teachers in this dump have it out for me. So why should he be any different? He's dumb too. He doesn't even realize that we call him Ribbit. Get it, Mr. Kermit, Ribbit? There's this nut job in our class, Matteo Hendrickson. He's pointed out that the only Kermit he's ever heard of was Kermit the Frog. Turns out he's a fan of the Muppets, not just Star Trek, Star Wars, Harry Potter, Halo, and every comic book ever printed. Anyway, a nickname was born. Every morning when the teacher walks in, late as usual, we start ribbiting. Ribbit, ribbit, ribbit. Mr. Kermit doesn't even notice. Either that or he thinks it's a compliment. As a teacher, he stinks. Not that I've had any good ones. He never even gives lessons. In fact, he hardly ever speaks out loud. He just passes around these stupid worksheets all day long. Boring, doesn't even begin to describe it. With a normal teacher, if you don't do the work, you get in trouble. Not Ribbit. He acts like he couldn't care less if we do the worksheets or not. I've turned in every assignment, and he's never graded a single one and handed it back. Kiana complains. What's he doing with them? Maybe he's eating them, I suggest. He's weird enough. She rolls her eyes at me. She's annoying, but it's not like the other kids in SCS 8 are any better. There's Parker, who has to be the dumbest person in the whole school. Remember the kid in first grade who, when he got picked to read aloud, everyone else wanted to drink bleach? Well, Parker still reads that way today, one word at a time, at the speed of molasses, sounding out every letter. This is the idiot they give to the special driver's license to. No one is safe. There's Storm Anderson, super jerk would be more like it, but I guess he's both. He's a non-stoppable running back, an amazing point guard, and a lights-out pitcher, which is why the school gives him an automatic get-out-of-jail-free card. That makes me mad. So wait a minute, let me read that again. So a running back in football, point guard in basketball, and lights out pitcher, that's baseball. So like all 3 seasons, all 3 sports, he rocks it all. That makes me mad. Why should scoring touchdowns mean that you get special treatment? But here's the thing. Last spring, Barnstorm threw out his knee. He's on crutches now, banned from sports for the whole year. And by the time he won't be in middle school anymore. So all the teachers have suddenly started to notice that the last time he turned in a homework assignment was never. That's the kind of person who lands in our class. Like Elaine Ostover, who sits in the back row. She has to be about 6'2" and as solid as an oak tree. She hardly ever opens her mouth, but when she does, her voice comes out like a low rumble, like a subwoofer. Kiana asked me about her. That's Elaine, I replied. Rhymes with pain. She frowns. Everybody says that rhymes with pain. What does that mean? You don't want to mess with Elaine, I advised her. Last year, she headbutted this kid down the stairs because he was looking at her funny. Wiped out like 15 people. The lane outside the nurse's office stretched halfway to the cafeteria. If that's not pain, I don't know what is. Kiana checks out Elaine's head, which looks like one of those giant statues on the island from the corner of the world's geography textbook. She has to register her head as a deadly weapon with the FBI, I put in. Kiana skewers me with a sharp glance, and so I say, well, not really. But she definitely tore the door off one of the bathroom stalls and used it to crush the laminating machine. I add, I wasn't there, but everybody knows it. You're scared of her, Kiana decides. I'm not scared of her. I can handle Elaine rhymes with pain. If you don't say the full name, it increases your chances of being the next victim. I just don't want to get in trouble for fighting, that's all. She nods. Because you're the big expert at not getting in trouble? By the time I realize that I'm mad at her for saying that, she's on the other side of the room, and the chance to yell at her is lost forever. Riam Barclay is supposed to be this amazing artist, although all I've ever seen him do is doodle. I guess his doodles are pretty good if you're into that kind of thing. He drew one of Ribbit that's a dead ringer for a teacher. The silken cheeks, the dark circles around his eyes, just the right amount of gray in the thinning hair. Raymond blew one part of it. He drew the coffee mug too big, almost the size of the trash barrel. Maybe that's how he ended up in SCS 8, which isn't exactly for geniuses. It doesn't help that his stepdad is in a rock band. They practice all night, so Raymond sleeps most of the day in school. One day, Mato welcomes me to class with a whole story in this deep, throat-clearing gibberish that sounds a lot like he's trying to spit out a bug while he's swallowing by mistake. I don't appreciate being messed with, especially when I'm not even sure how I'm being messed with. What did you say? I demanded. It's Klingon greeting, Mato explains cheerfully. It means, may you die well. My eyes widen. You want me to die? The Klingons are a warlike race, he says. Dying in battle is a honor. They love that. But I don't. And from now on, if you've got anything to say to me, say it in English, not some phony language. Klingon is not phony, Mato cuts me off, outraged. It maybe started out on Star Trek, but it's turned into a legitimate language with a dictionary and an alphabet. There are even regional accents depending on which part of Klingon home world you come from. In the South, for example, he keeps talking, lecturing, clueless that my blood is boiling, and the other kids are laughing like it's a big joke that this little creep is making fun of me. What's the matter with you? I shout at them. Doesn't anyone have my back? Kiana steps forward, struggling to keep a straight face. She reaches for my arm. Although, it's the last straw. This Californian girl, who isn't even from around here, thinks I'm entertainment. A soupy frog swirls around in my head, tinged with orange until I can actually feel the heat from it. I've got to get out of here before I explode, leaving bone fragments and bits of skin all over the walls of the room. I hate this class! I pick up my backpack and hurl it through the open door just as Mr. Kermit walks into the room. The heavy bag misses his head about a quarter of an inch, and at this point, I'm so mad I don't even care. In my white-hot maze, it would make no difference for me if the backpack knocked the teacher's block off and I got suspended, expelled, and banished from this town. I do notice that through my rage, that Ribbit doesn't flinch, not even when I storm past him, slamming the door behind me hard enough to raise the school off his foundation. That's just like that. I'm alone in the hall, barely sure of how I got there. I slam my fist into a locker. It hurts, but I hope it hurts the locker even more. The locker is attached to the wall, and the wall is part of the school. And it's the school's fault that I'm so mad. I hit it a few more times with an open hand because that hurts a little bit less. I don't feel better, actually. It's more like every blow lets off a little more steam, so the pressure inside my head goes down. I'm still ticked off, but I can live with it. I slump against the lockers, breathing hard. So he's got some anger management issues. Probably needs to talk to someone. Instead of slamming, maybe like he needs to do like some deep breaths or counting backwards. You know, those things that we talked about in second steps. The guidance counselor said, oh, here it is. I was right. The guidance counselor says I have anger management problems. They don't know what they're talking about. I managed to get anger better than anybody else in the whole school, no problem. The door of room 115 opens and this lady walks up to me. At first I think she could be an 8th grader, but that's how young she looks. But no, she's definitely an adult. And the way she talks, she takes hold of my wrist, gently but with authority, screams teacher. I've never seen her before, so she must be new. Come with me. She knocks on the door of SCS 8. Mr. Kermit? I shoulder my backpack and stand behind her. We wait for the door, but there's no answer. He's probably in the middle of a puzzle, I offered in a voice. Puzzle? She echoes. Like a crossword. Ribbit, Mr. Kermit is really into them. She knocks again and then opens the door. It sticks a little. She has to put her shoulder into it. I guess I slammed it really hard. She leads me inside. Kiana is looking right at me. I feel myself starting to get mad again, but only for a second. I don't usually happen twice in a row. Mr. Kermit? I'm Emma Fountain. The woman introduces herself. I have a class next door. So far this year, not a single thing has gotten a reaction out of Mr. Ribbit. That streak ends here. The puzzle forgotten, he rises to his feet slowly, never taking eyes off her. They practically are bugging out of his head. He blurts, I'd know you anywhere. She smiles, which makes her seem even younger. Mom said to tell you hi, but that's not why I'm here. She indicates me. Is this your student? Oh, so they know each other. How do they know each other? I want to know. Is this your student? Mr. Kermit looks blank. It hits me. He doesn't have a clue, even though I nearly took his head off with my backpack 90 seconds ago. My own teacher doesn't even know me from Jack the Ripper. Of course it's your student, Kiana pipes up. It's Aldo. Well, he's making a lot of noise in the hall, Miss Fountain announces. That's not being a basket filler. Mr. Kermit Googles, a what? A bucket filler is someone loving and caring who fills up others people's invisible buckets with good wishes and positive reinforcement that makes them feel special. She regards Aldo disapprovingly. Someone who creates a disturbance and makes it impossible for other children to learn is not a bucket filler. That's a bucket dipper. Oh, fill the bucket with good stuff. If you're doing bad stuff, it's like emptying the bucket. Okay. Suddenly I realize what she's talking about. It's from this picture book that's supposed to teach little kids to be nice to each other. It's really big in about first grade. It's an elementary school thing, Mr. Kermit. Kiana supplies, hopefully. Just because this is middle school doesn't mean we shouldn't treat each other with respect, Miss Fountain says earnestly. It worked for my kindergarten class last year, and it should have some high expectations for children who are even older. Right, Mr. Kermit? I wait for a teacher to give her the brush off. Good old Ribbit would brush off World War III. But for some reason, he doesn't. What's his motivation? With great effort, he tears his eyes off her and swivels to me. Were you dipping? I stare at my sneakers. I guess. Mr. Kermit turns back to Mrs. Fountain. You look just like your mother. She smiles. I'll take that as a compliment. To me, she says, you apologize to your classmates too. You wasted their learning time as well as your own. Sorry, I mumble. You know, about the learning time. Relax. Graham drools. Who learns? Thank you, Mr. Kermit, Mrs. Fountain says certainly. I'll give my mother your regards, and she backs out of the room, shutting the door quietly behind her. Weird lady, Barnstorm puts up, waving a crutch dismissively. All that bucket filler stuff, like we're 6 years old. Hey! Mr. Kermit shouts him a sharp glance. Miss Fountain is not weird. She's a teacher. Can she be both? Raheem wonders out loud. Kiana won't let it drop. She's not just bossy, she's nosy too. And the combination makes her like a bloodhound. What gives, Mr. Kermit? What's the deal with you with Miss Fountain? For the first time all year, he actually looks annoyed. Did I, or did I not, distribute worksheets? A paper airplane does a loop-de-loop in front of him. There's a chorus of rivets, including one from Elaine, that sounds like it came from the underworld. Parker chimes in. Face it, Mr. K. You have barely looked away from your puzzle since school started. But the minute she shows up, you hit the ceiling. She's your kryptonite, Mado puts in. Kiana snaps her finger. It's her mom, right? You and Miss Fountain's mother used to be a thing. Mr. Kermit, who couldn't even be riled up by a roaring bonfire in the wastebasket, picks up his crossword puzzle, rips it into a million pieces, stomps on them, and stalks out. Even though I can't stand the guy at that moment, I actually relate to him a bit. He may be the worst teacher in the world, but we have something in common. He has anger management issues too. Let's see how long this one is. 2, 4, 6. Okay, I'll do this one too. Chapter 5, Mr. Kermit. Emma Fountain. Let me start again. Emma Fountain. I can scarcely believe it. Of all the classrooms and all the schools she had to walk into, mine. She's a time machine. That's what she is. The spitting image of her mother. It brings back memories I thought were buried forever. I can still see the engagement notice in the newspaper. Fiona Bertelsmann and Zachary Kermit. The photo of the happy couple cheek to cheek. Eyebrows perfectly aligned, smiling like nothing was ever going to come and rain on our parade. How innocent we were then. How blind. How foolish. Oh yeah, he did talk about how he had a fiance and that all fell apart. Mm-hmm. It was over in a heartbeat. The test, the scandal, the breakup. Since then, I've only seen smiles like that twice. 7 months later, when Fiona lined her eyebrows up with Gil Fountain in the engagement notices, and today when their daughter Emma stepped in through the doorway of room 117. Fate has a way of sticking it to you twice, resurfacing like a bad burrito. This morning was my second shot. Every day draws me 24 hours closer to early retirement, but the last lap isn't going to be a cakewalk. First Thanos and the Unteachables, and now Fiona's clone in the next room next door. A living, breathing, bucket-filling reminder of the life I missed out on. If that poor kid tries to teach middle schoolers the way she ran her kindergarten classes, the students will have her throat open by Columbus Day. I should sit her down and explain a few things, but that would mean I care. Caring is where the troubles start. Hard experience taught me that. I didn't make it to this cusp of early retirement by caring. I made it by keeping my head down, regardless of whether they give me honor students or Unteachables or a zombie apocalypse. All I have to do is endure. There are small satisfactions. The hiss of an air-controlled closing of the school entrance behind me as I exit the building, the crunch of my shoes on the bad pavement of the parking lot, the stab of pain in my sore shoulder as I open the ill-fitting door of my 1992 Chrysler, the one Fiona and I bought to start our new life together. Sky blue, although now it's mostly rust. I don't know why I've kept it so long. For sure it isn't the money. The repair bills alone would have brought me a Lamborghini. I turn the key in the ignition and the motor coughs and dies. A few minutes later, the hood is open and I'm staring in it as who knows what. Suddenly there's a screech of tires and a pickup truck reversing across the parking lot at top speed, hurtling toward me. My one thought is that if I'm crushed to death here for now, Mr. Thaddeus and the school district won't have to pay for my early retirement. The pickup roars to a stop with the rear bumper 6 inches from my legs. Eyes blazing, I shout, "Are you crazy?" The door opens and the driver gets out, and I blink. It's one of my students. I know the Unteachables are a tough crowd, but I never expected to be one of steal a truck and use it to try to kill me. Sorry, the gas pedal sometimes sticks a little. When my shocked expression doesn't fade, the kid adds, "It's me, Parker, from class. What can I do to help?" "To start with," I rasped, "you can stop reversing at 90 miles an hour. Why is a middle school driving at all?" As he launches into this whole story about his grandmother, the family farm, the provisional license, I conjure my picture of him in a front row desk, examining worksheets from the point blank range like he's staring through a jeweler's eyepiece. "Wow, that's a pretty old car," he tells me. "I mean, mine's old, but yours is like classic." He squints at the name and his raised chrome letters, and it says Coco Nerd. "Concord," I correct him. "Didn't anyone ever teach this boy to read?" "Never mind that. Any idea of how I can get it started up again?" Give Parker credit. He's better with cars than he is with words. He tinkers around under the hood, and pretty soon the motor is running again, although it's belching gray smoke all over the parking lot. "Stop it." A silver Prius pulls alongside, and the window is open. And through the billowing clouds, we can just make out Miss Emma Fountain. "Turn it off! Turn it off!" Parker rushes behind the wheel and kills the engine. She gets out of her car, waving her arms to clear the air. "Do you have any idea how much carbon is in that smoke?" Mrs. Vardalis is the chemistry teacher," I replied, deliberately misunderstanding the point she's trying to make. "I'm in charge of, well, you know which class I'm in charge of," I indicated Parker with a slight nod. "I'm bucket filling," Parker tells her proudly. "You know, helping Mr. Kermit." "Mr. Kermit," she asks, "how old is this car?" "Your mother picked it out," I inform her with an oddly defiant smile. Her eyes widen. "Oh, wow, that's old. It's just that people didn't understand emissions back then. It was before everyone started putting the environment first. Recycling, composting, installing solar panels. A large speech forms in my mind how this is a free country, and it's none of her business what anybody drives or how old it is or what it spews into the atmosphere. But for some reason, I can't say it. Not to her, not to that face that looks so much like Fiona's. She softens. "Well, maybe you can keep it, but you definitely have to put on a catalytic converter." I don't know what that is, but I do know it's for a car. "It's on my list," I assure, "right after a new floor for the back seat, just in case I ever have passengers." Parker peers in the back. "Wow, is that ground?" "Air conditioning," I supply, tight-lipped. "Old school." Emma regards me with pity. On the plus side, she and Parker managed to get the motor running again, minus the smoke this time. "Wow, Miss Fiona," Parker raves. "You're really good with cars." "I learned from my mom," she explains. "She took a course in auto mechanics because she bought a real lemon once." Her voice trails off as she frowns at my old car, connecting the dots. I swallow what's left of my pride. "Thanks for your help. I'm positive that her first act after getting home will be to call her mother and say, 'Ma, guess what? He still has that car.'" The calendar appears in my mind, and the magical date in June circled in gold Sharpie. Only 172 more school days to go. All right, and I'm going to stop there. I really am loving how this book is having different characters giving their point of views, how we're hearing the story, and how we're seeing that each kid has their own specific problem. And what I'm hoping, this is what I'm hoping, that as we continue through the story, that each one of them gets help with their own problem. I'm hoping. All right. Till next time. Bye.